This movie is fine. Hello, everybody. I am the Spirit Man, the embracer of human good and analyst of fiction. And if, for those of you who have watched me for a little while now, you'll probably remember that when I first started this whole What I Remembered series, I started out with a particular couple of Spider-Boy movies, which I really fucking hate. But thankfully I got all that anger out of the way with the first 2 episodes of What I Remembered. And now after so many very fun December videos for Christmas and New Year's Eve respectively, it's now finally back time to just some ordinary What I Remembered videos of just random movies that I think of off the top of my head, most appropriate enough to do What I Remembered skits for. And since I started out with Spider-Man movies per se, though I seriously doubt that the Spider-Boy movies should ever be considered official Spider-Man movies to begin with, I thought it would be best to continue to begin the new year with the remaining Spider-Man movies, starting with the beloved MCU film Spider-Man Homecoming, which I may or may not be doing a vlog video for with a fellow critic of mine. Anyway, for those of you who don't know, I am a huge fan of the Sam Raimi trilogy of the early mid-2000s, including Spider-Man 3. I don't care what anyone says, Spider-Man 3 is a fantastic sequel. And I could go on and on about how fantastic of a sequel it is, but that's a whole different story. Shut up. Guys, come on, just shut up. What we're focusing on right now is Spider-Man Homecoming, the long-awaited film debut, well, technically solo film debut of Spider-Man in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, seeing as how Spider-Man already appeared in Captain America Civil War, one of the stupidest superhero movies I've ever seen. I'm sorry, that's just how I feel, and just like Spider-Man 3, that's a totally different story that I'll get to another day. But right now, let's just focus on this. Spider-Man Homecoming with Tom Holland, that Filipino kid, and Marissa Tomei, and so forth. Let's not waste any more time. Let's get started with how this little Spider-Man film goes. And go. So we start off with, the movie literally starts off right after the ending of the Avengers. The original Avengers film. Fantastic movie, by the way. Literally my second most favorite superhero film. Where we see, like, the Stark Tower after it's been burned up, scarred, and stuff after the Chitauri attack. And we see all these construction workers trying to clean up the mess, but they're being screwed around with by these government guys who don't want them involved with cleaning up for some reason. I don't know. And one of the construction guys is none other than Adrian Toomes, who is destined to become the Vulture later on. And as he and the other construction guys are being forced off the property, the excessively damaged property of whatever part of New York they're at that's in clear view of Stark Tower, that will become Avengers Tower later. Adrian Toomes and his buddies find a bunch of Chitauri weapons lying around, and they decide, hey, we can make some good money off of this. We're going to do this our way. And then it cuts to 5 years later. Right off the bat, we have like one of the biggest problems that this movie has for me. It's trying too hard to connect this Spider-Man movie with the Marvel Cinematic Universe as a whole. We know this takes place in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We don't need this to be tied with we don't need any part of this to be tied with the ending of the first Avengers movie, let alone a bunch of Chitauri weapons relating to the antagonists of that respective movie. You know, obviously this guy's going to become the main villain and all. he could have become that without any involvement with the Avengers climax and Chitauri and so forth. He could have just made the Vulture tech and stuff on his own with his henchmen and so forth without any Chitauri stuff or Avengers stuff whatsoever. And speaking of unnecessary stuff to include, we then have Spider-Man watching his own home videos he made with his iPhone, I guess, during the events of Captain America's Civil War, because that was such a great movie, and we have to remind everybody about what that was all about. God, I'm sorry. I just really, really looked down at that movie. And again, it's another problem. We didn't need to be reminded of his role in that movie, which wasn't even that good of a role to begin with. And then we start seeing him be Spider-Man, saving the day in local New York streets, local Queens and Brooklyn and so forth, and while also trying again and again to reach Tony Stark's, I think, asking the same thing all the time, literally going, hey, so when am I going to help the Avengers again? When am I going to join up with the Avengers for reals? And so forth. Like, because that's what Spider-Man is about. Spider-Man is about joining the Avengers as soon as possible, even though he hasn't even been Spider-Man, or he's barely been Spider-Man for a year or so now, if even that. And by the way, I'm annoyed with how the filmmakers compared these Spider-Man movies to a Harry Potter style kind of series where it's literally going year by year. Like, it's totally unnecessary. But yeah, we see him doing that, and I think he comes across some guys who have this high-tech weapon stuff that they try to use to rob a bank, and he messes up, and that tears some local stores down and so forth. And I think it's that very night that as he's sneaking back into his bedroom, and thinks he's alone, he closes the bedroom door and turns around, and then he sees his best friend, Ned Leeds, who is not his best friend in the comics or any of the cartoons. They did that just for the hell of it, but I'll get to that and more later. Like Ned Leeds just sitting there so shocked that he drops their giant Lego Death Star they were using for a science project apparently. And Aunt May's calling out, "What's wrong? Is everything okay up there?" And Peter, who's still in the Spider-Man suit, is going, nothing, everything's fine." And he's starting to take the suit off while Ned's freaking out. "You're the Spider-Man. You're on the ceiling. You're on YouTube." No. Ned, what are you doing in my room? Your Aunt May let me in. You said we were going to finish the Death Star. And he even asks questions like, "Wait, you got that from Tony Stark? You work with Tony Stark? Are you an Avenger? Yeah, sort of." No, he's not. He's Spider-Man. He doesn't need to be part of the Avengers. I feel really silly, really stupid fanboying out here, but why is this what we're doing with the first Spider-Man movie of the MCU? Why? But, so now Ned Leeds knows Peter's secret as Spider-Man, and he gives him the basic stuff later on about how he's bitten by a radioactive spider and so forth. We literally have nothing else of his origin story except a loose allusion to what might have happened to Uncle Ben in this universe. When Ned at first is all excited, geeking out, like, we so gotta tell people, we gotta make things awesome for us, we're gonna be awesome. Peter tells him, "No, I can't do that to Aunt May. She's already been through a lot, Ned. I can't put her through any more." "Oh, okay, I get it." Like, that's all we get. That's all we get of Uncle Ben, because apparently so many film fanboys out there are so sick and tired of seeing Uncle Ben getting shot and killed and whatever. It only happened twice. That only happened twice. Once, as far as I'm concerned, considering how the Uncle Ben in the Spider-Boy movies was a total asshole who I was glad got killed off. Not even halfway through that fucking movie. So, Peter's trying to make sure that Ned keeps their secret on the download, but Ned, of course, won't shut the fuck up about how Peter is Spider-Man and all that. And at one point, while overhearing their crush, Peter's crush, Liz Allen, talk about how she really likes Spider-Man and it'd be so cool to meet Spider-Man, Ned, like a complete idiot, calls out, Peter knows Spider-Man! Peter knows Spider-Man! Shut the fuck up! And I think Peter literally tries telling him, dude, shut the fuck up! But of course he doesn't. He has to try to pull off this whole bullshit scheme of trying to make Spider-Man show up at the popular kids party. Because that's what being Spider-Man is about letting your best friend push you into becoming popular just for the sake of your best friend wanting to become popular. God, Ned Leeds was a total asshole, total prick in this movie. I didn't like him very much. I mean, there were some things about him that were more redeemable than others, but still. So Peter and Ned go to this cool kids party, this popular kids party. Oh, I forgot, Zendaya's in this movie. That's pretty much all I can say is that Zendaya is in this movie. You know, Zendaya from Disney Channel, who's still in Disney Channel for some reason after all these years. And don't worry, as some of you probably expected, she is completely pointless in this movie. Every scene she's in, she has no reason to be there except to remind us that, hey, I'm Zendaya, I'm still on Disney Channel, and I'm in this movie. I'm a part of the MCU now. And I think literally everybody, all the filmmakers and cast were talking about what a cool character that Zendaya plays as, and she literally does nothing. She just shows up, makes some snarky remarks to Ned and Peter, and then goes back to doing whatever she's doing. That is like literally nothing. No character, no purpose, nothing. And she does something else really stupid later on, but I'll get to that later, and it's not even much of anything. It's just a cheap joke. So when Peter and Ned go to the party, Peter tries to show up as Spider-Man, but suddenly he catches wind of a bunch of heavily armed thugs committing crimes and stuff, and he goes after them instead. And while doing so, he comes across the Shocker, which is either Herman Schultz or some other guy who's been the Shocker before in the comics and such. In fact, I think earlier Adrian Toomes accidentally kills one of the guys who was the Shocker. In a pretty funny way, I will admit, where like he threatens him and he pulls the trigger thinking it's just going to shoot a concussion blast or something, not a lethal blast. And he's like, what the hell is this? I told you not to make these weapons lethal, or whatever. I don't know. I think the guy he was working with was the Tinkerer. The Tinkerer is a classic Marvel supervillain from decades past, for those who don't know. Because we had to have him in this movie. Well, actually, that's the ironic thing, is that in the comics, in the very, very early comics, some of which I own of Spider-Man, Spider-Man did fight Vulture and the Tinkerer literally in the same comic book issue. So have to give props to, what was the director's name? John Watts. I have to give Watts credit for sticking to that. Spider-Man fights Vulture. He almost drowns in the harbor, but he is barely saved by Iron Man, who is not Tony Stark. This Iron Man we see is not Tony Stark in his suit. It's just one of his Iron Man suits operating on control from the real Tony Stark, who's hanging out in some Middle Eastern palace or something somewhere, some bazaar. And he tells Peter, like, hey, aren't you going to heat yourself up with your suit's heating features? I keep forgetting this is Tony Stark's suit, and it has all this cool stuff that Spider-Man can do, that Spider-Man could not have made for himself. And after heating up, Tony tells don't bother with the bird guy. That's what the Avengers are for. Don't bother with the bird guy or the shocker guy or these other guys. That's what the Avengers are for. Well, where are the Avengers? Why aren't you handling this? Because we got lots to do or something? I don't know. He has some bullshit excuse for not doing anything about it. About all these weapons smuggling, heavy weapons smuggling, and so forth. And then Ned calls Peter up and tells him, "Sorry, dude. Looks like we're still losers." Yeah, because Peter was totally committed to making themselves the popular kids. Like, fuck you, Ned. And of course, Spider-Man. Early on, Spider-Man asks Tony, "When am I going to help the Avengers out again?" "When I tell you, you can. Stop calling me. Stop calling Happy and asking for it over and over again." He's one to talk. I just find it kind of pathetic that Spider-Man, even though he's only a teenager now, is already trying to get in touch with the big boys when he's barely been a hero for that long himself. Excuse me. Peter and his high school buddies go on this academic field trip, because apparently a bunch of these classic Spider-Man characters are on the same academic decathlon team or something. You know, Liz Allen, Betty Brant. Like, what the hell is she doing there? When I saw Betty Brant on the local school news channel, I was like, I literally dropped my hands going, what the fuck? What is she doing there? She's supposed to be a Daily Bugle reporter. And one of Peter Parker's first crushes. But they didn't get Ned Leeds right. Why would they bother getting Betty Brant right? She's a high schooler now and the head of the news board or whatever, as well as part of this academic team or whatever. Everybody goes on this vacation to Washington, D.C. Oh, and I forgot, Flash Thompson is there. Flash Thompson, who is not a blonde football jock, but apparently an academic jackass who likes to show off to Peter. And is also popular somehow. But hey, who says you can't have popular academic assholes in movies, right? So they're on vacation to Washington, D.C., and even though Peter's being invited by Liz to hang out with the cool kids and stuff, he has to stick with his responsibilities as Spider-Man and go investigate more into the whole Vulture stuff, which is happening in Washington, D.C. as well for some reason. At one point, all the popular kids, including Liz, get stuck in an elevator in the Washington Monument, and Zendaya is there, Michelle is there, that's her character's name. Michelle's there for some reason, telling Spider-Man, "My friends are in there, you gotta help them," and Spider-Man does so. That's right, but before that, he, while trying to catch the bad guys, follow the bad guys and stuff, he forms a bond with his suit, literally with his suit, because his suit has an AI. I mean, why does Spider-Man's suit have an AI? And this is his first movie, the first Spider-Man movie in the MCU. Why does he have an artificial intelligence in his suit that's voiced by Jennifer Connelly, of all people? Yes, Jennifer Connelly, Betty Ross from the Hulk movie of 2003, directed by Ang Lee. That's Jennifer Connelly. What was her name? What was that character's name, that AI character's name she voiced? I already don't remember, and I already don't care. Veronica or something? I don't know. So he forms a bond with her while trying to learn all his suit's features and stuff, and trying to catch the bad guys, but, you know, all hell breaks loose. I think he fights the Vulture again, but most importantly, he saves his academic buddies from the Washington Monument and then goes back home. And then at one point or another, he faces the Vulture again after getting some info from Miles Morales' uncle or something, because we have to include Miles Morales in this somehow. He gets a tip that the Vulture is meeting up with some big bad thugs on this boat, including Mac Gargan, who's supposed to become Scorpion later on, and some other Spider-Man baddies for later on. Tony Stark calls Peter up and realizes that he must be up to something a bit too heroic. And what else happens? Like the bad guys catch Peter. He fights the Vulture off, but the Vulture uses some high-tech weaponry to literally split up the boat. And Peter freaks out. Spider-Man freaks out and tries to use like dozens of webs at once to hold the boat together, to try to hold everybody together. But then Iron Man comes out of nowhere with his own machines and saves the day while saying, "Hey, Spider-Man, was it a school assignment you said you were on?" And then after saving everybody, Peter and Tony have a little heart-to-heart chat. Literally, because Tony actually was there this time. He actually was in the Iron Man suit. And he explains to Peter, You think it was easy for me to trust all this to you? Everybody said I was insane for trusting a kid with all this stuff. That's it. I'm going to need the suit back. No. I need this suit. I am nothing without this suit. If you're nothing without the suit, then you don't need it. You shouldn't have it. So Peter gives Tony the suit up, and then he goes back home and tells Aunt May about how life sucks and so forth. Aunt May, I mean, it's bad enough that Aunt May looks way too young. Marissa Tomei is way too young to play this classic Spider-Man character. The point of Aunt May was that she is one of the only very old, very dependent guardians that you see in any story, anywhere, in any franchise. You rarely see a character like that, but that's what made her so special. Is that about how frail she was, but also how strong she was to look after Peter and look after all the people she loved, despite her frailty, despite her numerous health issues and so forth. I don't understand why they had the nerve to make Aunt May so young, so freaking young. But I think Peter gets to go to the homecoming dance with Liz Allen, but lo and behold, guess who Liz Allen's father is? Liz Allen's father is the Vulture himself, and Adrian Toomes has been doing all this insane criminal stuff to help his family. Drama, big plot twist, like, why? Why was this necessary? Wasn't it fine enough that we didn't know practically anything about this guy's backstory? We had to make him the father of Peter's crush, which has literally must have been a plot twist used in so many other movies before this, superhero or no superhero movie. As Adrian Toomes is driving Liz, Peter to the homecoming dance, they happen to be talking about Spider-Man, and Adrian, apparently Toomes realizes right on the spot that Peter must be Spider-Man, and as soon as Liz leaves, Toomes looks back at him and asks him, "Does she know?" "Know what?" "Oh, you know. Now look, I'm going to let you off for now, but if you ever get in my way again, I'll kill you, and I'll kill everybody you love." Oh yeah, because he's definitely not going to try to stop you now, asshole. Now go in there and have a good time. How It Should Have Ended got it right, where Peter points out in the How It Should Have Ended video, I love your daughter. Does that mean you're going to kill her? You win this round, Spider-Man. Anyway, Peter goes into the homecoming dance, and Michelle is there, who goes, what's up? Fuck you. Like, because that totally works. Again, like I said earlier, that's just a really cheap joke and doesn't work. Surprising. Then Peter backs out of the homecoming dance literally at the last second, telling Liz, I'm sorry, I can't. And he leaves and starts getting ready to stop the Vulture, his big plan to rob... To commit a heavy heist on Tony Stark's weapons plane from the Avengers Tower itself. And without his special spider suit, he has to wear his homemade Spider-Man suit, which is somewhat reminiscent of of the Scarlet Spider suit from the 90s. And he informs Ned, I have to do this. I need your help to stop Vulture. So, so Peter confronts Vulture, but Vulture is all being calm and cool, like, hello, Peter, I didn't hear you come in. I need you to understand why I'm doing this, but oh well, I'm gonna kill you now. He uses the vulture wings, which can move on their own, to like tear the building apart and leave Peter all trapped under the debris in the dust, and it looks like he's about to be crushed. This is supposed to be reminiscent of a classic Spider-Man comic from the 60s called, I don't even remember. It was Amazing Spider-Man number 33, but it was like Spider-Man's Last Stand or something. It takes Peter some time, but I remember there's something on YouTube where like they dub over Uncle Ben's lines from the Sam Raimi films, and they use the Danny Elfman classic music. It's really great. So he eventually lifts the debris out, and he barely escapes, and then he goes after the Vulture, takes down the Shocker too with Ned Leeds' help. Ned helps him track down Vulture and such, and then a teacher catches Ned in the computer room saying, "What are you doing here?" And Ned literally, this is what Ned literally goes. Ned literally goes, I was watching porn. A fucking porn joke in a Spider-Man movie. Oh my god, that's just so wrong in so many ways. That's all I have to say about that. So, Spider-Man has this big battle with the Vulture. Vulture barely almost escapes with the big loot and stuff, but Spider-Man brings him down and leaves him for Happy Hogan and the Stark security with a big note saying, "Big Bird didn't have such a lucky time. Your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man." And then some time passes, and Liz Allen is forced to leave the city, is forced to move out with her mother because her father has been exposed for his crimes and so forth, and she's miserable, and Peter apologizes to her, but she's just fed up with him, like, why weren't you there? Why didn't you help me? Or whatever. And she leaves, and things are back to normal. But hey, at least Spider-Man got to carjack Flash Thompson's car for the hell of it. And Peter is finally invited into the Avengers by Tony Stark, with an iron spider suit and everything. But then, what would you know? What do you know? Peter suddenly realizes, maybe this isn't what I wanted. Look, this isn't what I want anymore. I'm just going to be a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man for now. See ya. And then we see Gwyneth Paltrow. We see Pepper Potts show up. This is her first appearance literally in over 4 years since Iron Man 3. She just comes out of nowhere in what is perhaps one of the most awkward, worst cameos ever. They did not need to have this. She's looking around saying, "Where's the kid? Where the hell is he?" And Tony's like, "Well, he just left. He just went back." Well, then what are we gonna tell the press? And Tony's like, "Well, there is something we could tell them. Something else we could tell them. Happy, do you have the ring?" "Oh, I've had this ring since 2008." And Pepper's like, "Oh, okay, let's go announce our engagement, I guess." What the fuck? Why did we need this? This is not Iron Man's film. This was never Iron Man's film. It's Spider-Man's film. Oh my god. Oh, so Spider-Man goes back to being Spider-Man on his own, with his best friend's help, of course, because Ned Leeds is such a great character. Why the hell not? This fat Filipino best friend, a jackass. What else happens? We see Adrian Toomes in prison with Matt Gargan, and Matt Gargan's all, "I hear you know who the Spider Guy is. So why don't you tell more people about it? If I knew who he was, he'd be dead already." And, oh, I forgot. Before the end credits, Peter gets his spider suit back from Tony with a note that says, "This belongs to you." He gets it on, he puts it on with his mask off, and just before the end credits start, we see Aunt May at the door staring at him, shock face, going, "What the fuck?" And then the end credits start. So now she knows. Now she fucking knows that he's Spider-Man, though we don't see exactly how that plays into everything, considering that she wasn't seen or mentioned at all in Infinity War. But oh god, Infinity War was so stupid. But not quite as silly and dumb as this was. What was the other? Was there another post-credit scene thing that I forgot? Oh, Captain America. Captain America, like much earlier, he was in some PSA message for the school and stuff, and because Civil War had happened, the teacher literally went, even though he's probably a war criminal now, we're still going to look up to him. He's still cool and all. The movie literally fucks around with the audience by having Captain America give a message at the end going, patience is key, but what is patience worth if there's nothing at the end, yada yada. Is that it? Are we done with this? Can I go now? Fuck that. Okay, so, did I remember that right? Is that how Spider-Man Homecoming went? Or as I like to call it, Spider-Teen? Honestly, on my ranking scale, I would have to, of percentage that is, I would have to give this a 71%, like a midway C- in my book. It has a lot more good than bad, but it tried way too hard to be a bunch of things it didn't need to be. It didn't need to do. It tried too hard to be an MCU film. It tried too hard to be both a Spider-Man and an Iron Man film simultaneously. It tried too hard to be funny. It even tried too hard to be dramatic in some cases. What else? It just tried too hard on a lot of things, and it tried too little in other cases. It tried too little to just be its own movie. That's the biggest problem of this movie. Unlike the Sam Raimi films, this feels too much like a generic MCU film. In some ways, it literally feels like the exact same thing as any other MCU film that tries to be too funny, or too silly, too lighthearted, or whatever. You know what? Forget it. I'm not going to try to think off the top of my head all the problems there are with this film, even though there's quite a bit of problems that don't outweigh the good stuff as much. I mean, I liked Tom Holland. I liked the acting overall. I thought the writing was decent and all. And even Zendaya, I have a guilty pleasure of enjoying, even though she literally had no purpose except to tell us at the end, "Oh, I'm MJ. I go by MJ for short," even though if you look online, they make it clear she is not Mary Jane Watson. So again, fucking pointless, but I am not going to try to go into any more detail in regards to this movie, because as I hinted earlier, I am going to go into a lot more detail with a certain friend of mine in the near future. So any of you who are interested in seeing more detail on my thoughts and opinions about this movie, as well as my friends in the future, you'll have to wait until then to see how that goes. Okay, thanks so much for spending New Year's Day of all days with me as we enter 2019 with a lot more What I Remembered videos and tons more Spirit Man and what was that YouTube channel's name? Amateur Masters, that's what it is. Amateur Master stuff, plenty of Amateur Master stuff coming up. Thanks so much for spending a little time with me with this movie, and there's plenty more stuff to look forward to in the future. I am the Spirit Man, the embracer of human good and analyst of fiction, and thank you, Spider-Man Homecoming, for being what you are, for better or worse, and there's plenty more stuff to look forward to, for better or worse, in the future. Happy 2019, and Happy New Year's Day, everybody. Bye-bye.